House prices are expected to spike. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee. Let's have a look at an article from news.com.au discussing predictions of house prices spiking here in every city in Australia, pretty much. Now, for those of you that have been playing at home, well, let's just remind ourselves at what happened in the last few years with regards to the cash rate. Now, you can see here, for some time, for an extensive period of time, I didn't have to update this chart because nothing changed. It was pretty much flat at 0.1%. Now, a few things happened. The RBA asked the banks to prepare for the possibility of negative interest rates. The RBA also mentioned, and Reserve Bank Governor mentioned in passing, that they intended to keep rates at 0.1% or no rate increases until 2024. The media leapt on that. And people make, here's the reality. People make financial decisions, life-changing decisions, on the little soundbite they hear from Koshi as they're getting frantically ready to rush off to drop the kids off at school or to go to work. You know it's right, okay? I know we want to pretend and the economists like to pretend we're all rational economic actors. I got to turn that light on. There we go. We're all rational economic actors, but come on. Do you think normal people go through the minutes from the Reserve Bank board or listen to footage of his meeting, the governor's meeting with the senators? No, normal people don't. And if you do, or if you watch a channel where we discuss that, you're probably not normal. So congratulations, guys. That's one step away to not being an NPC. One step, not being normal. But we've also got to understand why people have ended up in a situation where maybe they've over-leveraged. Now, it's not everyone. A lot of people took advantage of the 0.1% rate to lock in a low mortgage, and now they're part of the mortgage cliff, and suddenly, myself included, we're going to hit bigger rates probably in 2024. See, that's the only reason I can imagine, well, two reasons why people wouldn't have locked in a few years ago when they said rates weren't going to go up. Number one, you wanted to pay off more than I think the 10 grand you can in extra repayments per year, depending on your mortgage and the bank that you're with. So your plan was to go full Dave Ramsey and decimate the mortgage. More so than that. But, well, that makes sense. When rates are low, you wanted to just throw everything at it. Okay, I can appreciate that. The other could be you anticipated rates were going negative because of what the Reserve Bank had indicated to some of the banks out there. And you got to dig a little bit deeper into some of those Senate hearings or meetings with the Reserve Bank Governor where he says negative interest rates are not really effective. And I can see how most people wouldn't have done that. So that's where I can appreciate how people could have gotten maybe a little bit over-leveraged and jumped in during the mania that we've seen. But of course, people are sitting there waiting. They're expecting house prices will come collapsing. And I've got the 10 pillars of the housing sector here in Australia, or house prices in Australia, that I think are, ingrained in our culture, to be honest. So, how much house prices will rise in your city? Despite interest rates continuing to rise, house prices are expected to spike further in 23 and 24, according to the National Australia Bank. So, housing has, let's remind ourselves. We'll just look at the SQM national house prices. Let me reload that, and we can see here. Hang on, guys, I'm just going to go full screen so I can see it. I'm going to have to look over on this screen because that's where... Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera. But you can see here, national house prices, okay, 2020, we're looking at 600 grand for all houses. And now we're sitting at what are we looking at? 850 grand. So a significant increase. And this changes per location. For someone in Sydney, they're probably thinking 800 grand, that's awesome. It's a good deal. For someone in Brisbane, you're thinking 800 grand, that's insane. Could have gotten the place for under 400 a few years ago, probably a decade ago. But this is the reality. House prices have certainly spiked. The lockdowns, the government interventions, the pandemic has not dampened Australians' desire to get property. Not by any measure. So let's jump back to this article. Sydney house prices are expected to rise by up to 12% in the next 2 years, according to one of the biggest banks. NAB is predicting that property prices in Sydney will rise by 6.9% by the end of 2023, a number released in its latest residential property survey. A further rise of 4.9% is expected for Sydney prices next year, with the bank attributing the prediction to the demand-supply imbalance, offsetting the effects of affordability issues due to interest rate rises. We are still seeing population growth continuing here in Australia. People are flooding back. They want to live in Australia, and that's going to put increased demand on our ability to supply the houses people need. And unfortunately, we've got many builders that are going under, so the whole industry is going to have even more challenges moving forward. So that's going to add to the ability to build those houses that people need. Residential house prices in most of the Australian capital cities are expected to undergo similar rises over the next 18 months. We revised up our expectation for dwelling prices based on the recent resilience and outlook for strong housing demand in the near term. While supply growth continues to be challenged by higher rates and supply-side pressures, NAB Group's chief economist Alan Oster said in the report. That said, we see the pace of growth slowing in the second half of 2023, with capital city average prices remaining broadly flat, but ending the year around 4.7% higher based on price gains in the year to date. So, what I suspect is we're not going to see the utter insanity of the mania during the lockdown period, during the last few years. These gains that feel like a crypto Ponzi scheme in some regards, or a crypto coin. I know they're not as insane as that, but you get the point. 30%, 50% in your house in a year. The bank predicts a 2% rise for Melbourne properties, followed by 7.4% the next year. In Brisbane, 5.4%, Adelaide 3%, Perth 6% are also predicted by the NAB. Hobart prices are expected to buck the trend and fall by 6.4% before remaining steady next year. The bank is predicting that the RBA will hike interest rates a further 2 times by September, taking the cash rate to 4.6%, but suggested rates could start to drop as early as next year. We see the RBA lifting rates to 4.6% by September, then staying on hold until 2024, a statement from the bank read. That sees national property prices rise by 4.7% this year and around 5% next year as rate cuts begin to add some support. Mr. Oster said inflation was expected to remain above the target levels for another 18 months. And here we're seeing, look at what the hell? Okay. Ipswich, Queensland, they're predicting a population increase of 126% and a speculative 2040 house price of $1.3 million out in Ipswich. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. I would not be surprised. We've gotten 2 big projects we've done there at local schools, out at Ipswich, out at Raceview, the last one we did. And there is a definite population growth out there. And Ipswich is not that far from Brisbane. It's not that far. I mean, we're on the south side of Brisbane. We're in Sunnybank. So for me to get to Ipswich, it's 30 minutes. And we go to Ipswich. We go to the Ipswich City Centre for Christmas. We've gone there for the last 2 years for their Christmas parade up the middle of the city there. And we really enjoy it. It's not as crazy as it's easier to get to than into the Brisbane Centre. And it's lovely, the facilities that they have there. I mean, Ipswich, you could commute into Brisbane if you had to work in the city or do a few days there, a few days here. 1.3 mil for your Ipswich house by 2046. It's only another 20 years. This is why people need to own their homes. People need to be encouraged to and able and facilitated to get into their homes when they're younger. So when they're retiring, they've got something that they can downsize, they can sell. I know they want to push everyone into super, super, super fantastic because there's so many other parties making money off it. But we need to allow people to use their super to help them get into housing when they're younger. Nothing's frustrating when you're fighting to save for a deposit, and you got this 10, 13% of every bloody paycheck getting locked away into your old. When you think, okay, I'd rather not pay super for 10 years and have all that money so I can get into a house early and pay a big chunk of it off, and maybe instead of, having a couple of $100,000 less in super, but I've got a house and stability. That's what we need. But they're not going to do it. Why? Because you've got the banks making coin off super. You've got the unions making coin off super. It's a big pot that has a lot of power and a lot of control. Fundamentally, I would argue you've got the political class here in Australia that don't want home ownership. Moreton Bay. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate all the benefits of super, but I really was a fan of the proposal to allow you to take 50 grand out to help buy a house, then put it back in later. Nothing wrong with that. Moreton Bay, up 64%. 1.8 million, 700 grand. Livingston, 57%. Sunshine Coast, up 57% as well. So you're going from 950 grand, median house price, to speculative 2.4 million in, what are we now? We're 27, so 17 years. So if you had a kid now just as they're about to become an adult. I mean, these prices don't seem that insane when you compare them to other parts of the country, do they? Gold Coast. So the median house price now is $1 million. You're looking at 2.5 million. A 55% increase on the Gold Coast. And I was down there on the weekend. We were down at Palmy, and I saw in the wild, I'll bring it up on the community post of the channel here, a NIMBY, not in my backyard type, not wanting the trams to go down to Palmy. Hang on, let me find it. There we go, trams out of Palmy. There you go, Oh, well. Logan. Okay, Logan. The city between Brisbane and the Gold Coast has a bit of a stigma with some of the council members, but it's a growing area. They're getting new facilities there. I mainly just drive through Logan, but occasionally I'll go there for things, usually buying stuff. So 350,000 now, half a million, 539,000, a 53% increase, and they're predicting housing to go from 600,000 to 1.6 million. We keep going here. You got Lockyer Valley, 1.2, Somerset, 1.3. So everything is going over that $1 million mark. Soon you won't be able to get a house for under $1 million. You'll be able to tell your kids, I got a place for $500,000, and they'll look at you like you're nuts. So this is the thing. If you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for a crash to happen, and I know there are people that are doing that. I know there are people saying, oh, it's a bubble. And I can appreciate that. I can see the arguments that people make. I can respect the positions they're coming from, but I just can't see it happening because fundamentally the supply and demand isn't the same. It's not going to adjust. He said residential house prices remained strong, given the impact of rate rises on affordability, and are up 16% on pre-pandemic levels. This is the thing. If people are saying, oh, look at prices, they've gone down recently. We're not even at pre-pandemic levels yet. And I remember in 2019 bitching about house prices on the channel. And even before that, housing affordability. But then the further back you go, housing affordability is always an issue here in Australia. A strong rise in housing demand appears to have been a key support, with population growth rebounding very strongly since international borders reopened in early 2022, he said. Population growth rose to 1.9% by 23, its strongest rate since 2008, and higher frequency data points to growth peaking at over 2% this year. This, combined with demand for additional floor space during the pandemic, which will likely take some time to unwind, has significantly added to demand, while completions of new builds have fallen despite a large pipeline of work to be completed. So there we go, everyone. And let's have a look here. Do I have the article up? No, I don't. Okay. That's all good. Anyway, guys, let's have a bit of a chat about this one, eh? So there we go. Predictions of property to spike next year and the year after, and well, some speculative high prices for 2040. What do you think, everyone? I mean, look at the prices we have now for property. Look at how much people are paying in Sydney and Melbourne, and even in Brisbane now. And think about it just a decade ago, or 2 decades ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And if people had said, oh, you'll be paying that much for property, they would have looked at you like a nutcase. And here we are. There you go. I think Australia is going to continue to change. I don't think housing is going to be within the reach of the average person anymore. I think that's a cultural shift that we're happening. If you want that to happen, we need to build more. We need to build further out. And people need to, well, appreciate the fact that the amenities that they will have further out are not going to be the same as what they grew up with. Similar to their parents had to make sacrifices to get into the market as opposed to their parents as well. What do you reckon? Well, there we have it, guys. Let me know your suspicions. Do you think we're going to see property at these prices, or is it all going to come tumbling down? As always, thanks for watching. Check out Heise BIM or Heise Does. I will put some content up there soon, I swear. And if you're a fan and want to support the channel, you can on YouTube or Patreon. Use our referral links via Pocket Squares or call us if you need an architect. Take care. Have a great day. I will see you all in the next episode of HeiseSays. Bye for now.